What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. Alright soldiers, so in this video we're going to be talking about Sanguine Abysscraft or Lust Abyss, whichever one you want to call it, potato. But we are going to be talking about the Sanguine Abysscraft deck and Omen of Lust. That's my favorite lust of all like the sins that are portrayed in cinema. And on fact that I actually do like the Omen of Lust in Shadowverse Evolved or Shadowverse in general too. So I am very excited to talk about this deck. But if you don't already know what Sanguine kind of does, it means that you're going to be pinging yourself, and when you do ping yourself, you have Sanguine active. So most of your cards are going to say if you have Sanguine active, you're able to do these extra things. So that is kind of how this deck is going to pilot, but with this deck, we're going to be pinging ourselves so we can swing in for some more aggression against our opponent. Alright, so let us talk about the new cards that came out that really do make this deck kind of like have a better face than it did before. So we have Valnarique Lustful Desire. And Valnarique Lustful Desire, so she's a 2-cost 2/2, you can evolve from 1, while Sanguine is active for you, this follower Storm, but when she comes in with fanfare, if your leader's defense is 7, you give this +2/+2. And of course, moving on into her evolve, so she does turn into a 3/3, and while Sanguine is active for you, she still has Storm, but on evolve, you can choose one of the two abilities. You can either put a Wings of Desire token into your EX area, or you can draw a card. Alright, so before we get into the token, let us figure out what our legendary card really does, or just review what it does. So essentially, if you've pinged yourself to give yourself Sanguine for the turn, she's going to have Storm. She's going to be a 4/4, and if you do evolve her, she's going to be a 5/5. So having a 5/5 with Storm on evolve is pretty good, and then on fact, you're going to be able to spawn this token out, or you're able to actually draw a card to replace her. But moving on into the token card, so we have the 1-cost spell card Wings of Desire, so you can select a follow in the field and give it strike. Deal each enemy follow in the field damage equal to the number of times your leader has lost defense this turn, and then deal 1 damage to your leader. Alright, so the fact that we're going to have lots of Storm followers in this deck, and of course we're going to be pinging ourselves a lot. Now it's not going to be quite likely where we're going to get into like 9 play points and we're going to be pinging ourselves for almost all of our life to, do X to the board. But there are going to be situations where we're going to have like 3/3s on the field and 4/4s, and we're definitely going to hit that, range for 3 and 4 when we're pinging ourselves in one turn. So we can get a lot of Storm damage and a lot of ping damage from our older Valnarique. Alright, so let us transition over into the cards that are really going to help out this deck that also came out in sets 14 and 15. Alright, so let's look at Laura Crimson Strife. So she's a 2-cost 3/2, and during your turn, whenever your leader loses defense, you can choose one that you haven't chosen this turn. You can either 1, select any follower in the field and deal a damage equal to the number of times your leader has lost defense this turn, or 2, give this follower +1/+1, or you can 3, give this follower Storm. Alright, so this card is just perfect for this deck, and the fact that it does have 3 modes, and 3 is kind of like the most we're going to be pinging ourselves in one turn. So being able to do all 3 effects, and of course we're going to be choosing the first mode last just because we need to get as much damage up as possible before we choose a follower. So we can go ahead and give this follower Storm, turn her into a 4/3, and then we can do whatever X damage we want to a follower. Alright, so moving on to the spell card, which I really do like because this does help us find our Omen cards. So we have Loathing Desire, so we deal 1 damage to our leader, and then we look at the top 4 cards of our deck. We may reveal a card with both Omen and Demon traits from among them and add it to our hand. Put the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order, and if you revealed a follower with Valnarique in its name, you give your leader +2 defense. So of course, if you're going to be doing this on turn 1, which, something that can happen just in case you might be drawing a bad hand, being able to look at the top 4 and then getting any Omen and Demon card with those traits, of course the same for 1 card, and that will be the next card we'll talk about. But of course, Valnarique does fit those descriptions, so we're actually able to search for our legendary card from top 4, and then if we do get our legendary card, we're actually able to heal 2. Alright, and lastly, I wanted to talk about our new 2-drop from Lust. We have Hermit of Lust, so she's a 2-cost 1/3. When she comes to play fanfare, you give your leader -1 defense to give this follower Intimidate. You can also activate to give your leader -1 defense to give this follower +1 attack. You can activate only once per turn. Alright, so this follower is definitely going to be helping us ping ourselves multiple times in one turn. So if you manage to have Laura Crimson Strife on your field and then also have Hermit of Lust, you can now have a follower that also has Intimidate, and then you can choose one of the modes for Laura, and then you can -1 again for Hermit of Lust to give her that +1 attack to really turn her into a 2/3 with Intimidate, and then you can go for Laura Crimson Strife again if you need to ping a follower for 2, or if you need to give her that +1/+1 if you need to. Alrighty, and moving on into the last section of cards here. So I'm not gonna lie to you soldiers, I actually forgot all about Alazar Timesworn Vampire. This was a card that came out in set 13 and most definitely was just overshadowed by everything else that set 13 was doing. I can't even honestly remember since it's been so far and long ago with set 14 and 15 being here for quite some time. But Alazar actually does have a pretty good ability for this deck. All right, so let's look at Alizar Timesworn Vampire. So he's a 2-cost 2/2, and this card can't be played from EX area while there are democracy counters on it. But you can evolve him for 1, and at the start of your main phase, you can remove a democracy counter from this card in your EX area, and if there are no democracy counters on this card, you can summon it, and then last words, you put this card into its owner's EX area, and then place 2 democracy counters on it. All right, so we'll get into this full effect once we get finished with the evolve. So moving on into the evolve though, when this card does die, you put this card and a Blood Arts token into its owner's EX area, then you place 2 democracy counters on this card and he turns into a 3/3. All right, so essentially you're going to be playing this card for free from your EX area, if I believe, but it's going to take 2 turns. That's the thing. It's going to take 2 turns for you to play this card, and then you're going to have to evolve it when you do play it from the EX area or whenever you play it in general, so you can go ahead and get this Blood Arts token into your owner's EX area, because this Blood Arts token is going to be very valuable when we do go for those big Sanguine turns. All right, but looking at the Blood Arts token, so it's a 1-cost spell token. You can deal 1 damage to your leader and each enemy follower on the field, give each Alizar Timesworn Vampire on your field +1 attack and drain, and then give them +3/+3 if there are 3 face-up evolve followers named Alizar Timesworn Vampire in your evolve deck. All right, so to be honest, it is pretty nice that we're able to give our Alizards the +1 attack and drain, so this will be really helpful for us to heal 4 back, and on top of that, being able to put some damage on the field or damage on a follower just in case they do have 4 defense, because we're only going to be doing this when we evolve Alizard so we can get another Blood Arts token when we do get the last words. So we're going to kind of want to loop this as much as possible when we can. But unfortunately for this deck, I don't think it's going to be hyper realistic that we're going to hit all 3 face-up Alizar Timesworn Vampires, just because it's going to take us a total of 4 extra turns to really get this off, and that's even if you manage to evolve the Alizard and get the last words off. But it can happen, don't get me wrong. The chances are low, but never 0. So it's something you can do if you want to start deck building with Alizard, but I will say in my build I am not going to include 3 of this. Alrighty, and speaking of deck list here, let us start talking about the Sanguine Abysscraft that is on the recommended decks on the Shadowverse Evolve website here. Alright, so I'm gonna be honest, soldiers, there are some things that I agree with here and some things that I disagree with. It's only maybe like 1 or 2 differences that I would say. So realistically, this deck, as it is right now, then this is a perfect good example build just to go ahead and get you started if you want to just figure out how to play the deck and how it's run, if you like it. And then, of course, if you want to upgrade the deck a little bit more and you really do like it, I do have my deck list that will be in the deck description below. And of course, we'll be going over that too. But just to go ahead and get into the cards that I do and don't like here. All right, so the first card that I would just have a little bit of a disagreement on is Zealot of Lust. So this card does do what the deck wants to do. It's just that it doesn't really have any leeway later in the game. So running it as a 3-of does kind of seem weird, but we do want to ping enemy followers for 2. But this does kind of seem lackluster if we're going to be playing in tempo and being able to ping ourselves, or when this follower is just taken care of, it's just a 3/2 that our opponent's going to take care of. Or even when we do get the big combo turn with the Sanguine and, you know, pinging ourselves multiple times, we are pinging an enemy follower for 2. And then probably that paired up with the other cards like Blood Arts and stuff like that, or the Valnarique token, then that could really like do a good job, probably in case you run into a ward or something. But that's the only reason I can find in managing on why we would run this card. But granted, the card still does what the deck wants to do. It's just what I personally don't agree with. Alrighty, and last card, which I actually do highly agree with in this deck, is Dire Bond. Just being able to ping yourself for 1 and then drawing a card is really big. I think that's really big in this deck, just being able to draw 1, because that's not going to happen too often in this deck. Of course, we do have the Desire spell card that we did just get that allows us to find our Valnariques or our Omen and Demon cards, but just being able to draw 1 is really big. And then of course on top of that, you're able to spend the extra play point while engaging it into the next turn, or on the very same turn if you have the play points, being able to do its fanfare again and drawing you another card and then ping yourself 1 so you can go for that big Sanguine turn. But yeah, I do say that this is a solid list. If you do want to run Sanguine Abysscraft or Lust Abyss, I highly recommend that you play this as a good example build. And if you want to step up, you start messing with the ratios on how you feel that cards you don't like, cards you do like, and stuff like that. Alright, but transitioning into my personal build for the deck with the help of Donut223, which I do want to give a shout out to, the Abysscraft main himself. So this is my personal build for it, which I kind of like adjusted the ratios. Now I will just advocate the fact for Alizard here. So Alizard, pretty good card as a 3 of. I'm not going to run 3 Evos. And of course, it is nice to get the big Alizard Evo, but you do got to realize when we do have 3 evolved face-up Alizards, by the time he turns into a, what, 6/6? That's what he's going to turn into. Our opponent's going to have the hard removal by that time. So we're not going to include the 3 of. We want to have as much value as possible. So I'm going to be running some extra ratios here and some other cards. But that's just my reasoning on why I don't have the 3 Alizard Evos. All right, so another reasoning, which is a big help from Donut. So Moonrise Werewolf. So it's just a 1/1 on regular, just unevolved. But this is really just going to help us just like deal with cards on the field. So we have Moonrise Werewolf. It's a 2/2 when it's evolved, but on evolve we select an enemy form on the field, and then if Sanguine is active for us, we can deal it 3 damage. Come on, we're the Sanguine/Lust deck. We're gonna have Sanguine active, so being able to deal 3 damage to another follower and then swinging in 2/2 into another, like potentially 2 defense follower is gonna be big, just so we can have some big removal. All right, so 2 last things before we close out here. So one, the reasoning, so there are extra cards in this deck. I do believe that this is 42. This is 42, but I do have 42 just for the fact that we have lots of cards that do allow us to draw. So we have Wings of Lust that filters, we have Sanguine Necklace that will draw in case we need to, we have Dire Bond draws, we have Loathing Desire, look at top 4, get a Valnerique if we need to, we have Blood Moon, which allows us to search for a deck for a beast follower, and we have lots of those targets in this deck. Now, the reasoning on the beast followers, which is the second reason, of course, so the beast followers are actually pretty good. So Parker Werewolf is just a very good late game, but it is searchable, so I did include that. That's kind of my reasoning for not choosing the Vampire Bat. But Argavi is really like the main beast card we are going to be looking for, so when we do get to 8 play points, or if we need to kind of like look for this card in case we go against Thief. Now, I don't exactly know the Thief matchup since Thief is just like very good. Hopefully you can get under Thief, but Thief just does what Thief does. But Argavi is just good in case you go against certain matchups that are going to be like flooding the board once we get to like turn 7 and 8. And when we do go for a play, and of course we're going to have Sanguine active since we should have like a Sanguine Necklace or something to like ping, and then do the full Argavi turn by dealing 5 to the board and then having a 6/4 with Storm, which is lots of damage there. And then on top of that, you have the 3 face at the end of turn if you have Sanguine active for you, so that's just a lot of damage from Argavi, and we searched them from Blood Moon. All right, and lastly, if you're balling on a budget, Parker Werewolf is just a very good late game card for 6 play points. I only included one of it just because this card doesn't do anything on 4. I wish it did. If this card had Rush, I would absolutely like amazingly love it. But unfortunately, you're able to do anything on turn 6. So 6 play points for 6 damage, you can't really beat that, that's fair. And then you're also able to heal yourself for 2. And alrighty soldiers, that is the entire Lust/Sanguine Abysscraft deck breakdown that I have for you. Now, like I said, I encourage you to play around with the ratios to see what works for you. Now, I don't believe this is going to win Worlds or anything, but this is indeed a fun deck, and it is my favorite Omen, so I wanted to talk about it, of course. So if any of you soldiers are interested in building the Lust deck, of course, I'm going to have the deck in the description below on Shadow Showdown, which I do highly suggest you can build decks off of that because you can put them straight onto TCG Arena. But alright soldiers, that is all that I had for you today. No updates for tomorrow. I'm going to be looking into maybe switching up the crafts here. We can do yokai if you soldiers want me to talk about yokai, because I don't think I've talked about yokai before. But that's up to you soldiers. Let me know in the Discord or the comments below if you want the yokai Abysscraft deck or not. And if not, then we're just going to move on into the next craft. Now, make sure you are safe in whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah. TRINN. Just to get you away. What I got to do. What I got to do. Just to get you away. What I got to do. What I got to do. Just to get you away. You pull me too close, now we hesitate. Every single move you make, it makes me feel